We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. CES has wrapped up. We've combed through some of the news. I'm excited to get to the news today. Tom knows why. He saw my posts on Facebook. Some of you did too.
Oh, yeah. That was a great post, by the way. I was like, clearly I was the one that posted that.
Oh, yes. I mean, it had Tom all over it.
All over it. Let's talk about that. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That is the primary and best way to get in touch with us. If you choose a different way, you can choose going to www.avrant.com and leaving us a comment. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Those are both perfectly acceptable places to leave comments. Now, if you choose to go to youtube.com/c/avrant, you will find our videos there. Our behind-the-scenes video, which is rough, and our complete 2-hour video, which is polished.
Sort of. More polished than the behind-the-scenes.
Yeah. But if you leave a comment there, you'll be lost within all the other comments of people we don't listen to. So, I'm sorry. YouTube is what YouTube is. You just have to kind of let that stuff go. So, one of the other ways is better. If you want to contact us directly, it's rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom@avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. And my Twitter is has nothing. I generally don't tweet anymore. The last time I was tweeted regularly, I did the first season of Daredevil. I did a live tweeting of my reactions.
Tweet along.
As I watched it. I haven't done it since. And I don't think I got through the whole series before I stopped doing it. I think I got about 5 episodes in. We also have our producer, Austin, who helps with our question list. He monitors the question@avrant.com email. So if you email that, you're emailing him. He has Twitter @Austin, TEN Pont. He's got his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about watching movies.
All right.
One would assume.
It had to happen one day.
It had to. They watch movies.
They
don't
do
turn
watch
the sound on, though.
Oh, okay.
They just sound off.
Well, we were talking about Jonathan's comment from last week or the week before. I can't remember. Apparently, people judge things better when they can only see them and not hear them anyway. So
that is true. That is absolutely true. Watch a martial arts movie with the sound off and see how close those fists of fury are to other people's faces. And the answer is not very much. Not very much at all. So, Austin, yeah, we watch movies. All right, we're going to thank our listeners of the week. This week, we're going to thank Earl. Earl went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There, he left a PayPal donation, which you too can do. You can use your PayPal account or a credit card. It doesn't matter to us because we never see any of it. We just see the money comes in every once in a while. So we want to thank Earl for leaving a donation.
Yeah, Earl, thanks so much for that donation. We appreciate it.
We also want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/avrantpodcasts.
That's right.
I'm going to remember that eventually. I mean, whatever. Anyway, so Patreon is a place where you can support your local or not so local artists who are creating content that you enjoy. Patreon has a $1 minimum per month. It's like a monthly
subscription
salary. Basically, you're giving us a salary, what you think we're worth every month to you personally. And that might not be very much, but if it's $1, then you can go to Patreon and do that. If it's less than $1, then you can let it accrue and go to AVRant and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. So we thank our 51 patrons. Thank you guys and gals.
Yeah, all the folks who are supporting us over there at patreon.com, thanks so much. I said last week that eventually the number would stop ticking up and level off. Apparently people took that to say this week.
This week.
This week is the week it leveled off.
This week. Well,
but at least it didn't go down, so I'm still happy with that.
It's been a new year.
And if you take the donation amount and divide it by the number of people, clearly some people are donating more than $1 a month. It is the only way that math could possibly happen.
Except for extremely large values of 1. So, if you can't support the podcast financially, we understand that. feel free to support us in other ways. One of the ways you can support us is by talking us up to manufacturers. So we want to thank Jason, who wrote directly to Gary Akubian over at SVS. Jason's SVS sub stopped working. When he wrote SVS support, they responded very quickly, even on a Sunday, and after trying some troubleshooting, he was sent a replacement amplifier under warranty. Jason says that he recommends SVS to friends who ask him about subs, but with such great service, he now feels like pushing them on people who don't even ask. Hey, dude, ever heard of SVS? No? You need a sub? No? What's a sub? Let me sit down. Let me talk to you. So he says it's thanks to us for pointing him SVS's way. So that's kind of cool. And Carrie bought a Marantz SR6011 receiver from Accessories for Less and let them know that he heard about them from us. So thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Jason.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for sending that note over to Gary Akubian. That's the president and CEO of SVS. He takes emails directly.
Very approachable guy.
Yeah. He responds himself from his email account. So there's no going through middlemen with that guy. So yeah, very cool. Always happy to hear that SVS is standing behind their products. We know they do, but it's always good to hear another good customer service story.
Absolute proof from customers.
And Carrie, thanks so much for talking us up to Accessories for Less.
That's right. So the news. Here we go. Rob's all a quiver. Then Tissa, say it. Patient. The Denon AVR X8500H receiver and Marantz AV8805 Pre-Pro were announced at 13.2 channel processing with explicit mentions of being able to configure 7.2.6 or 9.2.4 Atmos setups. They'll also be able to do 13.1 Oro 3D after a free firmware update. 13.1.
Yep, that's 7 traditional speakers.
Yeah.
So this is Oro we're talking about. It would be, for 13.1 Oro, it would be 7 traditional speakers, then front heights, so that's 2 more.
Yeah.
Surround heights.
Yeah.
That's another 2 more. Optionally, you could do rear heights instead of surround heights. That's acceptable.
Okay.
And then now, the new ones, because before you could do that. With the 11-channel receivers, you could already do that much. Now, the ones you can add on top of that are center height, so height speaker above your center speaker.
Yeah, Voice of God.
And the Voice of God, which they call, the proper name is top surround, but we call it Voice of God, the one that's directly above you. So that's how you get to 13 with Oro now.
So it's $4,000 for the Denon, 4,500 for the Marantz. They provide, which is funny because the Marantz doesn't have amplifiers, but whatever.
The Marantz does not. It has XLR outputs on the back, but no amps built in. And the Denon actually has 13 amplifiers built into it. They've shown the inside. You can count the number of little blades on either side of the thing because they've separated them left and right. There's 7 on one side, 6 on the other. That adds up to 13 amplifiers built in. Yeah.
So they provide 15 speaker outputs so that you can switch between different 13 speaker configurations if you wish. And I guess Rob's probably giddily showing some images online here.
Well, so first of all, it's just fun to see all the speakers that can be connected. Now, you could.
And this is where Rob gets excited.
You definitely could not drive all of these simultaneously. You can drive 13 at a time. That's the maximum. You can physically connect 15. So one example is you could connect a 7.2.6 configuration with 3 pairs of overhead speakers, plus your traditional 7, and you could connect a 9.2.4 configuration, which would be the front wides, and you could switch between those 2 things if you wanted to.
Probably not easily, but yes.
That's one way. Or the other thing you could do, which is, I think what they were really sort of intending, is you could wire up that center height and top surround Voice of God speaker for Oro, and that would only be active with Oro. And then your other 6 overhead speakers will be active with Atmos. But yes, they're showing 24 different speakers plus 2 subwoofers that could be connected.
Do we know if there's any limitations on which speakers you can pair up? Like, we know that at one point you can only have, you can't have top fronts and top middles or whatever it is.
Right.
You know. So do we know what limitations they have?
So Denon didn't officially post the manual for the X8500H. For example, if they put up the web page for that model, so you can go to the Denon website, the official Denon website, and look at the X8500 web page, and they have their downloads and documents section. And if you go there right now, it doesn't show the manual. However, some people sleuthed out that if you just put in the model number to where all the other manuals are listed, what do you know? The manual comes up.
The manual is there.
So
Wow.
it's there. So of course
I just haven't made it active yet, but it's still there. That's actually happened to me before, where I've pre-done articles for CES before leaving, and then people sussed them out and we got in trouble.
Yeah. So I didn't capture images to show you in this video because the amplifier assign thing is very, very long, and that would be a whole lot of scrolling through images, but they basically outline all the things you can do. So what's happening on the back of this receiver is you've got your traditional 7 outputs, of course, and then they have height 1, height 2, height 3, and a height 4 / front wide output. And you're like, wait a second, how can there be a height 4? Well, that's the whole thing of maybe I have front heights, top middles, rear heights, and center height and voice of God. And I'm going to be switching between those two. So when I'm doing Atmos, maybe I'm doing 7.2.4 and using the front heights and rear heights.
Right.
Or actually it could be 7.2.6 and the top middles. That would be one 13 speaker configuration. Then when I'm listening to Oro, I'm going to use the front heights, rear heights, center height, and top surround. And that's going to switch over to the height 4 outputs while switching off the height 3 outputs.
Yeah, but how is like Odyssey and the setup and everything going to have to work on this thing in order?
Well, I mean, Odyssey's just going to, during the auto setup, it is just going to attempt to output sound from every single one of those outputs and detect if something is connected to it. So it's actually kind of interesting. What if you look through the manual and the amplifier assign, height 1 is basically always assigned to your whatever is front height-ish. So that might be front heights, it might be top fronts, it might be Dolby front upward firing speakers. It might even be top middles if that is your forward most pair of overhead speakers. But that's what height 1 will do. Height 2 is then whatever is rearmost. So that could be your rear heights, back Dolby upward firing speakers, top rears, whatever that is. Then height 3 is whatever's in the middle. So that might be your top middles. It might be surround heights if that's what you're doing for Oro 3D. It could also be the center height and top surround if that is the closest thing to the middle and you're using the height 4 / front wides to be front wides. Because if those are front wides, then they're front wides and that's it.
Right.
So that's sort of how it goes down the line. Now what's most interesting that I found in the manual, and again, they haven't even officially posted this, so maybe this is subject to change and we shouldn't take this as gospel. But it looks pretty complete, and I did capture this table, so if you're watching the video, you can see this table, or we'll have the link to the manual, so you can look this up yourself. But this is under the listening mode section, the sound mode section.
Yeah.
And previously, with all of the Atmos receivers, if the soundtrack wasn't actually Atmos, then you could use the Dolby Surround Up Mixer, right? So if you were listening to a 5.1, a 7.1, or even a 2-channel source, it could upmix it to make use of all 11 of your speakers. But one of the limitations of Dolby Surround Up Mixer previously is that if you did have front wide speakers connected, the Dolby Surround Up Mixer would not use them. They would just remain silent. Well, now they're showing, according to the manual, that the front wide speakers can be active with the Dolby Surround Up Mixer in this X8500 and in the AV8805 Pre-Pro from AVRant. So that is a first. This is the first time we're seeing front wides active in the Dolby Surround Up Mixer. Now, there's another interesting thing, which is that DTS has an equivalent. They call theirs the Neural X Up Mixer. Same idea. If it's 7.1, 5.1 stereo, you can upmix it to use more channels. And the DTS Neural X Up Mixer shows that it can use literally any speaker position that you can connect to this thing, including the Oro positions. If you've happened to connected surround heights, center surround, top surround, any of those, DTS Neural X can actually send sound to it. But there was one more limitation. If you look really closely, you'll notice that DTS Neural X has a asterisk 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And if you look what those say, Asterisk 2 says that audio can be played through a maximum of 11 channels when 11 or more speakers are connected. So it actually won't play sound out of 13 speakers. Dolby Surround Up Mixer will. That's mentioned elsewhere in the manual. So DTS...
I'm not seeing the wides. Where are the... Oh, there they are. Front wides. I see them. Well, they're kind of way back in that list.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So getting kind of granular on it, and some people's eyes are going to be totally glazed over at this point. But it excites me because I'm a fan of front wides. I like being, and I always bemoaned that the Dolby Surround upmixer didn't use them. The DTS Neural X upmixer could. But it's interesting that there's this limitation of 11 speakers max, and that goes for DTS X as well. You'll notice it has the same asterisk 2 as DTS Neural X. So DTS is limiting you to 11 speakers, whereas Dolby Atmos and Dolby Surround upmixer can actually use 13 simultaneously. There you go.
Very exciting.
Yes.
There's no new Odyssey on this?
It's still multi-EQ XT32, sub-EQ
ready
HD.
For a new Odyssey. I'm ready for a new Odyssey. That's the next thing that's going to excite me.
Yeah.
Believe me.
I don't know. I don't know if Odyssey's planning to do anything more. I mean, the Odyssey editor
when you
app
showed
is still
this
there.
picture, are you showing the picture of the completely reasonable number of speakers?
Oh, here we go. I'll put that back up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that middle one was a light. I was like, okay, well, at least they put a light in there.
Oh, the one right in the middle above the. I noticed that
the voice of God.
There's only a silhouette of one person in this room. I mean, how could someone with this setup be single?
Yeah, I know. Who could imagine?
Now that's the voice of God speaker straight above that guy.
Straight above. I thought that was a light bulb. I was like, okay, well, at least they have one light in here.
And I mean,
I did not think that could possibly be.
It's,
there's no space for light in here. The light has to come from the floor.
Yeah, or around the perimeter or something. Yeah, I'm going to guess that silhouette is a guy. I'm just going to play the odds. Just going to play the odds.
I'm going to play the odds and say, why does he have such a stupidly small screen that he's sitting so far away from?
Well, because
he's got this many speakers.
He spent all his money on speakers, clearly.
Dude, that's a CRT. That is a rear projection 720i screen.
Yeah,
oh
I do like those 13 amps. And now that Denon does have an EI transformer. The Marantz Pre-Pro has the toroidal transformer. So, that's why you're spending the extra $500 to take all the amps out, but put a big toroid in there instead.
Yeah. All right, Sony.
Yeah.
Sony showed a prototype 85-inch 8K resolution LCD TV that was able to hit 10,000 nits. They dubbed it full spec HDR 8K, or as I like to call it, stupid. You could literally sit inside this TV and not see the pixels. I mean, that's how
it's 85 inches diagonal, but it's 8K resolution. So the full spec HDR, that's because whether it's HDR10, HDR10 Plus, Dolby Vision, HLG, all of them max out at 10,000 nits. So this TV, if it's able to actually produce 10,000 nit peaks, it means it doesn't have to tone map at all.
Right.
Whatever the signal is coming in, it can show it.
Just show that.
It just shows it. So you don't need dynamic metadata with this thing. What does it matter? It just shows exactly what the signal says to do. That's full spec.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
8K is ridiculous, though. It's just ridiculous. I refuse to admit that we need 4K, much less 8K. It's just, at some point, can we just call it infinite K? Can we just say it's just too small?
There's a finite number. You can count the pixels if you want to.
Sony announced their UBP X700 Ultra HD Blu-ray player that will support Dolby Vision. That is literally the only thing on this line.
Yeah, they did not make a liar out of me. They did, in fact, announce a Dolby Vision supporting player. However, I'm a little bit disappointed because it's actually, build quality is lower than the X800. Yeah. It's not replacing the X800. So it's more plasticky, it's flimsier, and I don't know if it's going to retain the ability to adjust the HDR10 output when you're down converting from HDR10 to SDR. The X800 could do that. That was one of the features that made us really like it. I don't know. The X8700 might, because it probably has the same processing in it as the X800, but we don't know for certain. So, yeah.
I forgot to check my audio levels. Oh, well, it'll be fine. Sony is also being quite conservative with their TV lineup this year. The A1E OLED will continue as their flagship. They've added the A8F OLED. Will somebody go over to Sony and just tell them how to name TVs in a way that makes any sort of sense? So this is exactly the same. The A8F OLED, exact same picture quality and processor, still uses actuators to make the screen itself a speaker. Mm-hmm. Who thought that was a good idea? But it just has a normal stand and no subwoofer. And the the Z9D continues as their flagship LCD. No updates for their 930E and 940E, so the new 900F is their new top model. Mm-hmm. It gets more local dimming zones versus last year's 900E. It gets brighter. It also gets the X1 Extreme chip with Dolby Vision out of the box, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah, so last week somebody was asking if they should upgrade their X900E. If you want to upgrade it to the X900F, that might not be a bad idea at all. Obviously, the X900F will probably be more expensive than the clearance prices of the 900E. But it's doing all the things that person was really looking for. They wanted Dolby Vision. Now the 900F has Dolby Vision. They wanted more zones of local dimming so that they wouldn't get the flash lighting in the back black bars. It's getting more local dimming zones, and it is it's brighter, so it's hitting the full 1000 nits, which the 900E didn't used to do. So it's that's kind of everything we asked for while keeping the price at the 900 series level. So that's kind of nice.
So the TCL announced their new 6 series of TVs to replace a very well-received 55p 607s. They've increased the number of local dimming zones. They'll have a 55 and a 65-inch screen this year. Last year, they just said 55 inches. And they're keeping the same price point for the 55-inch model, so that's good.
Yeah, so they call their local dimming contrast control zones because, of course, they have to trademark it. But they're saying the 65-incher will have 120 contrast control zones, which is pretty darn good for nice. It's tough to call something that's well over $1,000 entry level. But as far as 4K HDR Dolby Vision full array local dimming LCDs go in a 65
inch size,
Roku
built in and all that.
Roku built in as well. That's right. Yeah, so that's exciting. Cool. That could start to eat into Vizio's market. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah. I really like recommending the TCLs for. I've used them before. There's just so many people right now who are getting very frustrated with having to use an external box for their streaming. So I've got a friend right now who's got a Vizio M series based on my recommendation, and it streams all the stuff. And he's got an Xbox 360 that he's been using to stream all his stuff. He's like, I just want to use the thing that's in there. I don't want to have to use the other one. I'm like, well, use audio return channel. He's like, I did it. It's really soft. The volume's very, very low. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. He goes, well, can you come look at it? I'm like, yeah. So I was over there this weekend. I'm like, hey, let's do the TV thing. He goes, oh, yeah, the remote's a tablet, and my son learned how to download games on the tablet, so now I take it away from him, so now it's in my car. I'm like, well, go in your car. He goes, well, it's kind of cold outside. Like, in Florida. Yeah. It's like, 50 degrees.
I might have to put 45. A shirt on, not a jacket, a shirt.
I mean, my kid was walking around with flip-flops today, right? And he's like, I don't know. We'll do it later. I'm like, whatever. So he's still using the Xbox 360. I don't know. He goes, oh, you made it sound better. I'm like, yeah, you had it in stereo mode. So I just turned on the game mode, and then now it's separating stereo into multi-channel. He goes, oh, nice. Yeah. All right. It's not loud enough. All right. Did you try turning up the volume? No? Okay, let's try it. Let's just go. Let's get to the questions here. We have Travis. 2 weeks ago, Travis was telling about his experiments where he was running his setup in stereo listening mode, turning off his subwoofer, and not hearing any roll-off in the low end of his speakers, leading him to believe that his crossover was not working when he was using the 2-channel stereo listening mode. Adding to the intrigue, he was finding this to be the case with 2 different receivers, a Pioneer and an Onkyo. We asked for some clarification, so Travis wrote us back because we were like, there's a lot of things that could be going on here. It could be in settings, could be this, could be that. But, so did you do this? Did you do this? How are you doing these tests? So first up, he was going to the back of a subwoofer and manually shutting it off there. The settings remained unchanged in the receiver, so it wasn't a matter of turning the subwoofer output off on the receiver, although he appreciates us asking, but being thorough by asking. Next, he had previously been sending the test signals from his computer, and his sound card offers a digital crossover when it sends out its PCM signal, but it seems to be a brick wall filter. If he sets it to say like 80 hertz, his speaker plays nothing below 80 hertz. It'll completely silent anywhere below the frequency set by the crossover. The frequency sweeps that he's been using are from YouTube. He sent the link to one of them, and this apparently explains the problem right here. The test signals he's been using are actually just sine wave test tones. They're not sweeps. They're tones. So it's a single tone, a single frequency played for about a minute. He was playing a 30 hertz tone, a 40 hertz tone, all this stuff. So with his computer set up, anything below his sound card's crossover frequency was completely silent through his speakers. Now, with his AV receivers, he was still hearing output from his speakers, even with the lowest test tone frequencies. So his assumption was that the receiver's crossover wasn't working because it was such a different outcome than his previous computer-based crossover. So with all of that now explained, What can Travis do to confirm whether or not his receiver's crossover is functioning and as it should be when he's using stereo listening mode? And to do that, you need to download an actual sweep.
Yes.
Not a test tone. So a sweep. And you use the audio check, right?
Audiocheck.net, yeah, because you can create a sweep of your liking. Now, you can find sweeps on YouTube. However, strangely, most of them go from the low end up.
Right.
And really, you want one that starts at a higher frequency and goes down, which you can find on YouTube, but for whatever reason, it's more... Audiocheck.net gets what you want. Plus, Audiocheck.net lets you do a thing. They have a little check mark there that says marked. And what that does is it puts in a little audible squelch sound. It's kind of sound. It puts that in every 10 hertz. So you can sort of count down to have an idea of where you are in the frequency sweep audibly. So yeah, you really do need a sweep, because what should be happening is, let's say you start the sweep at 300 hertz.
Sure. I wouldn't, but you're sure.
Yeah, but it's just so you get a good long
I wouldn't,
sweep.
because I would have to count the squishes all the way down to 80.
Oh,
that's
well,
a lot of
above
that's
100,
12.
above 100, it goes every 100 hertz.
So, okay, so it'd be 1,
2, 100,
3,
then 90,
4,
80, 70. Yeah. So it's not too bad. But yeah, it's start at, say, 300 hertz or something like that, and you're going to hear the sweep go doo, and it should start to get quieter. It's not going to cut off, because it is not a brick wall.
Right.
It just should start to get quieter as it goes down. And almost all of the bass management filters in modern-day AV receivers are a second-order filter. That's 12 decibels per octave, which means that if you set the crossover to be 80 hertz, it's only 12 decibels quieter from the filter itself down at 40 hertz, which is still plenty audible. It's definitely quieter, but it's by no means silent, not even close to silent. So it is a crossover. The speaker is still playing below 80 hertz for sure. So yeah, when you were playing individual test tones and expecting at some point for them to be silent or near silent, no, that's not going to happen. And plus, we don't know if the signal level of all the test tones that were played from YouTube were mastered to the exact same level. Some of them might have been louder in the signal themselves because they're coming from different places. So
you can take this and just burn it to a CD, or you can, depending on what your receiver you're using. The easiest way to do it would just be to burn it to a CD and then play it on something.
Or put it on a USB thumb stick.
USB, as long as you've got access to USB.
Yeah.
You know, and it can play whatever file format you have it saved in. That's the easiest way to do it. I mean, you could even stream it, I suppose. I mean, it's not like it has to be super high quality. Well, that's problem solved.
Yes.
Do we know if he's tried that?
I don't know. I have not heard back yet if he's tried that.
Okay. Infinite Gary. Gary asks, are the new 2018 OLED models offering anything in the way of new anti-reflective screen coating? Gary finds existing OLED models to be too glossy and reflective. I haven't heard anything, but yeah, this idea of anti-reflective screen coatings is sort of like it's asking for, like, hey, I want like a mirror that's not reflective. It's like, yeah, we could make it less, but
I mean, we did
never
have
go away.
matte screen LCDs.
Yeah, but they were never non-reflective. It wasn't like the light going into them just disappeared. They were like a black hole of light.
But the matte screen LCDs did a pretty good job of diffusing the light. Like if you had a lamp, you didn't see one bright spot being reflected in your television screen. It just kind of spread that out into a mush.
But the guy lives in Gary, doesn't he have like a blacked out everything's
in his theater room, but he doesn't have his flat panel in his theater room.
Isn't that in like his kitchen or something like that? Right?
He's got a kitchen. He's got a spare bedroom set up. Yeah.
I feel like the spare bedroom setup can be blacked out as well. But all right, have you heard of anything like this? Because I haven't.
So the only folks at CES who were talking specifically about their screen coating was Panasonic, but they weren't talking about it being anti-reflective. They were talking about a new black filter so that it wouldn't have the magenta tinge when lights hits it, which is something that LG and Sony already did in 2017. So Panasonic was basically just 1 year behind on that screen coating. So they're all still glossy. If you have one bright light that's somewhere behind your screen, you're going to see that one bright light reflected in the screen. Now, personally, I think the OLED screens are pretty darn good in, say, just a regular room that has a window and there's some sunlight coming in, not from directly behind you, face onto the screen, but you just have a window with some sunlight coming in from the room. They're pretty good at not allowing that to wash out the image. It's not that you're not going to see any light reflected in the screen. You will. It's just that they don't let the image get washed out. They have a good screen coating for that. But yeah, if what bothers you is being able to see reflections in it, no, they're all still glossy.
So he has an update from 2 weeks ago. He was putting 4:3 movies onto his 2.35:1 screen. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about the different options here, and the option I think we suggested was it's just going to be real small. You're going to have big black bars on the sides, and the 4:3 will be in the middle of your 2.35:1. So he tried that, but it was very, very small.
Yeah.
And so then he tried stretching the 4:3 image to 16:9, so it was more of an HD image, and then zooming that in so the stretched image filled the entire width of his screen. And yes, that means that there is a light spill above and below his screen with some of the top and bottom of the image being cut off. Despite all of that, Gary preferred the image that way.
So the people are a little fat and short.
Yeah.
Some of the
their
image,
heads are cut off.
Some of the image is
heads
just
are cut
cut right off, the top and bottom. You can see some of, if you're looking at the images on YouTube, you can see below the screen a little bit of reflecting below the actual border of his screen going on there.
That, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's not the way I would choose to watch it. But if it's if the size of your image is what bothers you the most, then all right, you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
This is a candidate for buying a 16:9 screen, and then I mean, if this is what you're gonna pay, I don't know how many of these movies he watches. But so, whatever. If he's happy, he's happy. I mean, I have the same problem like at the very beginning of Halloween, the first Halloween movie. If you saw like the opening credits or whatever, because of the way they did the credits, they wanted the entire image to be on the screen. Okay. Even on the 4:3, like the VHS, because I'm talking about VHX. So the VHS transfer, like everything looks normal because they cut it or whatever, they cropped it, the sides. Yeah. But because of the way that the credits were done, the credits section where they're walking down the street, they squished everything together. So that was on the 4:3, and everybody was real thin and real tall, looked real weird, and stuff like that just drives me up the wall. So there's no way I could handle this in Gary's. But you know what? If it's good for him,
I guess it's another argument for my iMac size screen. Then you could fill the whole height. You'd have black bars on the left and right. It'd still be there, but you'd fill the whole height that way.
He would still stretch it.
Probably.
At CES, Sony announced their new X1 Ultimate processor, although they only showed it in the prototype model products. One of the reps claimed that with the X1 Ultimate versus the current X1 Extreme, the difference in image quality when upscaling content is dramatic. Other brands also talked about their new, more powerful video processing chips, and they all mentioned to some degree how they would substantially improve lower resolution sources. Samsung even claimed that they're using artificial intelligence to continuously improve upscaling as their processors learn to do it better and better. So what do we think? Do we believe these claims? Nope, I do not.
Not dramatic, no.
Dramatic. Okay, you cannot make up new pixels. I mean, you can. But you're just adding artifacts to everything. It's just, there's just, all of this is just an algorithm where they're like, and it's like, you know what I mean? And then they shove it in there and it does its thing. That's it. That's all it can be. It cannot be anything else. It can't be, like what you see on like the CSI shows where like, we'll zoom in on the license plate.
Zoom in, enhance.
And now enhance it. You said that to a real technician, they'd look over at you like you had lost your mind. What do you mean enhance? Well, make it so I can read the license plate. How am I supposed to do that? Well, sharpen it. What do you think that's going to do? Like I saw it in the movies. It makes no, it doesn't work like that. When Harrison Ford did it in the first Blade Runner movie, I thought it was BS. And that was in like 1980 or something or 90 something. I thought it was BS then. It's still BS. They do it in movies all the time. It's not gonna. It doesn't exist, dude. It doesn't exist. I don't care what these people say.
Honestly, this year for televisions, as far as what we're actually going to be able to buy this year, very little in the way of picture improvements. OLEDs didn't get any brighter. Color gamuts didn't get any wider. We just talked about Sony's lineup. They're not even replacing their flagships from last year. They're just upgrading what was like their third tier down, and that's their new flagship. So, I mean, that one got a bit brighter, but no brighter than last year's flagships or anything. They just moved, one model series upward in performance. So everybody was talking about their new processors because that's basically the only new thing they had to talk about. The panels really
it's
didn't
to me, it's like
year.
talking about DACs. Like, oh, we got brand new DACs in our stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you guess what? Your other DACs were just fine, but fine. These are probably
they're like, now
better.
now we can handle 384 kilohertz signals. It's like, well, how much content is in that? And it doesn't make any audible difference anyway. Yeah, so that's why they were.
You take a VHX signal, you put it into any of these TVs, and it's going to look garbage when it comes out. It's going to look garbage. And you could say, okay, well, this one maybe looks slightly less garbage, but I'm not dramatic differences. I don't know. What are they talking about? Going from 1080i up to 4K? Is that what they're talking about? Because
I mean, Samsung was even showing 480p sources being upscaled to 8K. They were doing that whole huge thing, and they're like, look how much better it is with our artificial intelligence. So, I mean, the X1 Ultimate processor is going to be a necessity. They were using it in their 8K display.
Right.
8K has 4 times as many pixels as 4K, which had 4 times as many pixels as HD. So, 8K is 16 times as many pixels. Yes, you need a beefier processor to do that. So, they're developing it. That makes sense. But the rest is just marketing. It's they had nothing else to talk about. Everybody talked about their processors this year.
Yeah. Lastly, Gary has stuck with 5.3 in his dedicated theater. He's tried 7.1.4 in his other setup. He's never tried front wides. What would he be gaining?
Well, you'd be cooler, Gary. You'd be cooler.
No, you would not be cooler. Gary, don't listen to that serpent-tongued Canadian trying to lure you down the primrose path. The idea of front wides, Gary, is that you're controlling that first reflection. That's essentially what it is. You are putting those front wides where the first reflection would be coming towards you, and you are controlling it through the speakers. Is that a good thing? Rob thinks it's great. I've never experienced it, but I can see the benefit. I'll tell you what, I still, to this day, believe that front wides probably can have a more dramatic impact on your theater than overhead speakers can. That being said, I still don't own any, and
they very nearly went away completely, and only these $4,000 and $4,500 flagships have brought them back. So.
And they're like, we gotta do something that makes us different than everybody else. What are we gonna do? Front wides. Front what? Front wides. Speakers people can put on the ground. I can get behind speakers you can put on the ground. That's what people were saying in that boardroom right there. I don't know. There's benefit, Gary. Try it out. You've got the speakers.
Yeah, I mean, in your 7.1.4 setup where, Gary has been using that kind of as an experimentation base, which is great. Yeah. I mean, if you have the ability to do that, that's fantastic. Sure. Take your surround back speakers. Although I guess Gary would have to buy a whole new AV processor to do it, because I don't think
What processor does he have in
I'm
there?
pretty sure he has the Marantz SR6011, I think.
They don't have front wides anymore?
No, they went away with the 6010 was the last one that had them. 6010, 7010
from 4000 had it for sure.
They went away. So you'd have to actually get an older processor or wait for the 8500 or AV8805 to come out. So yeah, that's a bit of an ask. If that's what you have to do, Gary, if you can find an older one that does front wide super cheap, then experiment. Otherwise, yeah. It's front wides. They fill in the gap between your front and your surround speakers, which isn't a gigantic gap anyway.
Yeah,
I enjoy them.
Big. Steve has a 5.2 setup using Ascend Acoustics raw towers with Sierra 2 center and CBM 170 SE surround speakers, plus dual rhythmic F8 subwoofers. He mostly listens to music, but he'd like to expand to 5.2.4 setup for movies and TV. So he's already got a 5.2.
Yep.
He just needs the 4.
He just needs the 0.4 overheads.
Okay. His theater is roughly 18 by 15 feet, but it's an open floor plan, including vaulted ceilings and open to a loft upstairs. Furthermore, his house is a rental, so he's He is allowed to attach things to drywall, but he can't cut any large holes. No in-wall or in-ceiling speakers. In other words, this receiver is a Yamaha RX-A 2050, and he'd like to keep the cost for the 4 Atmos speakers low if possible. So he's considering the NHT Super Zeros, Cambridge Minx Mini, never heard of those, or possibly a Sand HTM 200 SEs or SVS Prime Elevation speakers. So though these cost more, it might be overkill? Question mark. What we recommend. And on the side note, he thanks us for stressing the importance of acoustic treatments. He says adding his 7 panels and corner bass traps made a critical difference in his very reflective room. So we have here, is this a fisheye lens? It looks a little fisheye.
Yeah, for the overall shot of the room, it's slightly fisheyed so that you can take in the whole thing. And then there's a couple more pictures of front and back.
So I'm guessing the big long couch facing the TV is the main listening couch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because that's facing his front speakers there that are flanking the television. Yeah. And he's got this loft that's going to be upstairs, so he figures below the loft is where he would put his front height or top front speakers. And then the ceiling on the back is part of the vaulted ceiling, so that's angled. So he'd mount them up there, but can't drill big holes. This is a rental, so he's allowed to mount things to the drywall, but not put big holes in it. I know what I would recommend.
I'm looking at the pictures.
I know.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking.
Well,
I like his placements.
Yeah.
I think his placements look just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think the NHT Super Zeros would be fine.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
they'd be fine.
I think they're a good fit here. They're aimable, which is nice.
Well, depending on what mount you get. I mean,
what mount you get,
they're just little sealed speakers is what the Super Zeros are.
So you can get like a nice little adjustable mount.
Sure.
You're only going to end up putting a couple of, it'd be like hanging a picture, really. And they're very light. So the Focal birds I have would work just fine here too.
I would even say the little birds.
Yeah, you could probably go with the little birds.
Yeah. Because these are overhead speakers. I mean, the little birds you could just put drywall anchors in, which is a pretty easy patch and repair when you remove those later.
Yeah.
So that's by no means putting in big holes. So the Focal little birds, which price-wise kind of fall in between all the ones that he mentioned, because they're $100 a piece. So that's
elevation speakers here would work as well. You got no. I mean, there's no reason not to.
But the prime elevations cost a bit more. So
that's right. Do you need them? I think they might look a little better. Yeah, they don't look quite as. Yeah, but if that's not really a consideration for you, then I think your speaker placement looks really good.
Yeah.
And your options that you gave us are all. I mean, I don't know anything about the Cambridge Minis.
No, I don't know.
But the other ones are all fine. And based on the fact that the other ones are fine, I'm guessing the Cambridge ones would be fine. Just add the Focal little birds to your.
Yeah. I mean, one advantage of the little birds in terms of price is that they come with the mount.
Yeah,
the mount's included. So.
Is the mount just like this mount that I've got? Is it got
the little birds and the birds have the exact same design. They're just one is a little bit smaller than
one's
the other.
A little bit smaller. So the nice thing about the mount so there's 2 mounts. There's a round mount that's like more of a tabletop thing, even though you could put 2 screws in it if you wanted to. There's a place to, or it's like a 3-prong one, like a 3 one. So the nice thing about the 3 one is that it's not a tripod. It's not just a straight tripod. Actually, it is. There's like 2 that come at. Well, I guess they're all. It goes into a similar angle from each other, but the center rod does not go straight up. It actually goes to a slight angle. So if you know that you're going to be putting these speakers at an angle based on the ceiling, you can put that you can adjust the angle of that rod based on that. And really, for these things, if I found a board that was going and I put 2 of the screws into it, I'm not really worried so much if that third one has a drywall anchor. It's not going anywhere. It's you just got to make sure it doesn't rattle. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So my vote goes for the little birds. That's what I'd go for here. But yeah, Super Zeros would be great. You just have to get a swivel mount that can mount them.
Yeah, swivel mount. Big, very important. Grant has a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays backed up onto a USB hard drive. His wife runs a small business. They like to have the content playing in the background, usually the volume low and the subtitles on. They also don't want to just have to keep interacting with the background entertainment, so they want the movies to play one after the other automatically. Grant had an old Sony S5200 Blu-ray player that was able to play the movies off of the USB hard drive, but none of his more recent players seemed to work. So for under $200, is there a way that he could play these movies off the hard drive and have them play one after the other with the subtitles on? Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing that of course comes to my mind is the NVIDIA Shield. That is $200.
$180 if you don't get the game controller, and it doesn't sound like you need a video game controller. So $180 comes with the
and
the
then that
remote.
Comes with then you could get the Kodi and all that stuff.
You could
and
do
then
Kodi.
you
You
should
could
be able to do that,
Plex.
right?
Yeah. So since I'm a Plex user, you definitely can't. So Plex has a few different interface options, which are right there. You just select whether you want to view things as big posters, whether you want to view them sort of as a a file folder list, or whether you just want to have them as a list of all your things. If you choose the list view, there is a play all option, which just plays them in sequence, just goes down the list. Plex is also very good at handling subtitles. Sorry?
It says play all. Can you loop it?
I haven't looked if there's a repeat function, but you can definitely play the list through once anyway.
There you go.
Yeah,
I missed something.
and then Plex is very good at handling subtitles. A lot of other players don't always get subtitles handled correctly, but Plex is very good at that. So Plex would certainly work. And the nice thing about the NVIDIA Shield is that Plex does require you have a Plex server and then a Plex player. And the NVIDIA Shield can serve both. It can be the Plex server and the player. So that's a great device that fits your budget and could do that with Plex. Now, Kodi should be able to do this. Certainly, if it doesn't do it natively, there's going to be some kind of plugin that lets you do all of this, because that's what Kodi's all about. It's just I don't use Kodi day to day.
Okay.
So I can't tell you firsthand whether that's exactly going to work exactly the way you want it to. But I mean, virtually anything you want to do playback-wise can be done with Kodi. It's just a matter of finding the plugin if it doesn't do it natively. So the NVIDIA Shield is a great Kodi player if you want to use it for that, but you can get a far less expensive box that'll play Kodi. For example, Xiaomi has their Mi box, MI box, which is, $70? Walmart sells them for $70.
Right.
And that's a great box. That's an Android TV, same OS as the NVIDIA Shield uses, but that's a great box for loading Kodi onto. Plays things really nicely.
It looks like a hub. It looks like the hub for the Harmony remotes. It's
a similar
tiny.
design. Yeah.
Does it even have a USB port?
Oh, I didn't even check if it has a USB. I must have. They all have USB ports, but you're right. I didn't even check for that.
I mean, where's the? How can I see it?
The other thing is,
like
you can actually use an Amazon Fire TV as a Kodi box. It's not an official app, so you have to side load Kodi onto an Amazon Fire TV, but you can do that, and those are like $70 or $80 too. So, yeah.
Dude, where are the specifications of this? Specs.
It does say specs, but I don't know what inputs and outputs it have. Ports. USB. There you go. USB 2.0 only. So
I was going to say, DTS 2.0 digital out, Dolby Digital Plus, up to 7.1 pass-through, though. So,
yeah. But the USB is a USB 2 port, so you're probably not feeding 4K through the USB port.
Nah,
I don't think that was the case anyway.
All right. That sounds like good. It seems like the NUC, the Intel
NUC.
an
Intel NUC. That's a lot more expensive. That's a full
really?
Windows PC.
That's what I'm saying. It's a full Windows PC. I didn't know if that...
Oh yeah, that'll be more expensive than either of these. Right. So,
Jack's open room is an open concept. He has 3 normal speakers up front. He's got abnormal ones in the back. But his surround and surround back speakers are in ceiling, and he's been using that as a 7.2 setup. Would it be a waste to add 2 more in ceiling speakers and try to expand to Atmos? And if he had 6 speakers in the ceiling, could he configure it for 7.2.2, or should he configure it for 5.2.4? Let's take a look. So he's got some sort of long, thin speakers up front.
Yep.
When we look on the ceiling here, well, we can't really see where they are in relation to... So what is that this? Oh, okay, I see. So the surrounds are out wide.
Yeah, I'm going to assume the surrounds are quite wide to either side of his couch, and then the surround backs are a little behind his couch.
Behind his couch, yeah. I don't know where you're going to put... The only speakers that you could add to this are top fronts,
Top
maybe?
fronts, yeah. I could see adding top... So to answer the question directly, if you were to add 2 more in-ceiling speakers, I would add them basically the same width apart as what is currently your surround backs.
Yeah.
but in front of you, about 5 feet in front of you. Call them top fronts. And I would configure that as 5.2.4.
I would too.
So I would keep the surrounds that you already have, and then instead of surround backs, I would call those top rears.
And
then you would have added the top fronts, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
I actually believe that this might actually sound better than calling them surround backs. I feel like they have a more genuine use back there. The surround backs are not so noticeable to begin with, and then you put them in a really compromised location as far as how high they are. Might as well call them top rears, and they might actually, do a lot more.
Yeah, because I mean, my real initial thought was, could you put 2 speakers on stands beside your couch and call those your surrounds, and actually have them at ear level, and then call these, I don't know, top middles and rear heights? That could be an option.
Can you do top middles and rear heights?
You can do top middles and rear heights.
You can't do
top middles and top rears. That's not an option. But you could just call them rear heights instead to make that work.
But that might be good too. I mean, but
yeah, if we assume that putting speakers on stands beside your couch to be your surrounds at ear level, if that is a no-go,
it's not going to happen.
Then I could see installing top fronts, and I would do it as a 5.2.4.
Yeah, I agree. That seems like the best possible option here. Interesting. Gabriel says he's been listening for years, but this is the first time writing to us. Gabriel's home theater budget has always been tight. For some reason, he spends more on his kids than his home theater. Dude, priorities. I have children.
They go hungry. They wear hand-me-downs. Their shoes don't fit. I got
3 boys. My third boy, he ain't seen a new pair of clothes yet.
But you got 4 overhead speakers now, so that's how that goes.
Totally not true. So he's been running a Franken system for years, including using Logitech computer speakers and even Apple Pro speakers as surrounds. I have no idea what an Apple Pro speaker is.
I don't know.
It sounds
either,
awful. Despite all that, he's been fairly happy with it, along with his Epson HC720 projector on his 90-inch screen in his room, which is roughly 23 by 21. He came across some very expensive Paradigm speakers. Oh, this is that guy.
Yes.
Paradigm speakers on Craigslist, so he decided it was time for a speaker upgrade. $40 got him a Paradigm CC170 Center, and $20 got him 4 old-looking Paradigm bookshelf speakers. All right, so this is where he's at.
That is a darn good deal, because Paradigm has always made good, if not great, speakers.
Yes.
So $60 all in for 5 speakers. That's
if they
good.
work, I'm 100% behind this. I would have plugged them in and checked the surrounds for sure, for damage. But if they work, this is a fantastic deal. So the 4 bookshelf speakers don't have any labels, so he's just curious which models they are. He's pretty sure the smaller ones are the Gen 1 Titans. They have the spring clips instead of the full binding posts that were part of the Gen 1 design. But he can't identify the larger bookshelf speakers at all. They are sealed, have sharp edges, a black wood veneer, binding posts on the back, and 2 5.2 and 5.25 inch drivers with a tweeter in between them. But the grills don't come off. Tried real hard, because I bet they do.
No, these ones actually don't. So, yeah.
And the way the Paradigm, I didn't say that they were breaking them at the time, but they will come up. The Paradigm logo and the binding posts are oriented. They definitely seem like they were meant to stand vertically, so he doesn't think it's a pair of center speakers. The woofers are from the CC170, and these larger dual woofer bookshelf speakers appear almost identical. So any idea what Paradigm model they are? So Rob, if you're watching the full video, you will be seeing the speakers side by side. You see a small one and a large one back to back. The small one does have a rear port and the spring clip type binding post. There's the screw down 5-way binding post on the
bigger one,
larger speaker. Then somehow, for reasons I don't quite understand, there are woofers. So he took the woofers out.
He took the woofers out somehow. I guess he
how do you take the woofers out without taking off the speaker grill?
Because you can see screws on the backs of these speakers.
So we took them out from the back?
He took them out from the back.
How do you even do that? Usually they're screwed in from the front. That's weird. Usually the woofers are screwed in from the front. So I don't know. Anyways. So I know you figured them out.
Yeah,
but
did some sleuthing. So yeah, he was suspecting that the smaller ones are Titan V1s, and yeah, that's exactly what they've got to be. Found a picture of the back of some Titan V1s. They look exactly like the backs of these smaller speakers. Just the ones in the image that I found have a sticker still on them that says Titan. So Paradigm Titans, that's pretty clearly it. Now the larger ones, it was a little hard to find. However, there was a clue on the back of the woofers, because
label.
One of them has a label that went to the CC170, and the other one actually has it written right on the magnet itself. It says LCR 150 OC.
Oh,
so there was a model called the LCR 150s, and if you find a picture of the back of those, well, it looks a heck of a lot like the back of the bigger speakers. And they were a sealed design with grills that did not come off. So I've got an image there where you've still got the sticker on it that says LCR 150. That definitely looks like the back of the larger speaker. Nothing is saying that that is not the speaker, so I'm pretty sure it's the LCR 150, which, as the name implies, was capable of being used as a left, center, or right. So it makes sense that it has that type of design.
Yeah, woofer, tweeter, woofer. That's what you would expect to see. So he asked, should he use the larger, not sure what model they are, speakers for his front, left, and right, along with the CC170 center, or should he use the Titans, since at least he knows what model they are? Well, now you know what models they all are.
That's right.
And without knowing the models, I would have told you, just by the driver configuration and the size, I would have said use those as your fronts and the smaller ones as your surrounds, for sure. And I would have been right. So, pat myself on the back right now, being right. That's an easy call. You always put the bigger speakers up front. They're going to be farther away from you, and they're by definition, if not surely by design, able to handle more power.
Yeah, and
really,
going to be asked to play more content than your surround speakers, for sure.
Now, if you were really concerned, there is no reason why you can't test them all in the different locations.
Give it a try, experiment.
Give it a go. But my gut is that you're going to like the bigger ones up front and the smaller ones inside. Jonathan is enjoying Floyd Toole's sound reproduction book. He came across one section that indicates standard perforation cinema screens that create a substantial roll-off in the upper, mid to high frequencies. For example, if a speaker measures ruler flat within the listening window anechoically, it'll have a high-end roll-off that basically matches the X-curve once it is placed behind a perforated cinema screen. Are movie theater screens less acoustically transparent than home theater screens? If so, why?
In general, yes. They are less acoustically transparent.
See, movie theaters are so much different than home theaters, and people get a little hung up on that. I think they think that what's good for the home, what's good for movies must be good for home. But in order to get that sound to all of those different people in that theater, you have to do things, that don't necessarily work in the home theater. This reminds me of the guy on the forums one time that I ran across who was wanting to. He had like a whole bunch of little speakers, and he wanted to put them all up front to do his left right, and people were like, "No, you really don't want to do that because you got multiple tweeters and there's gonna be comb filtering and this and that." He was like, and then he just got super pissed and started showing pictures of movie theaters where they have tons of speakers up front and blah blah blah. And everybody's like, "It's not the same thing." Here's a picture of the sound wall from the Pink Floyd The Wall tour. How come they can have all
which
these
was a
speakers
ridiculous
up there?
thing, anyways.
Yeah, why come they have all these speakers up here and I can't do it? I'm like. I watched it. I never commented at all. I watched it. It was just like, guys, just tell him it's okay. Just tell
he's gonna do it anyway.
He's gonna do it, and he's gonna think you guys are all idiots because you don't understand how good it sounds, even though we all know it doesn't sound very good. So the fact that movie theaters have different technology than home theaters. It's just the size of the room and the number of people and everything else.
The physical size of the screen, too. I mean, these
huge.
screens, sometimes they're 50 feet wide, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that type of screen in your home.
You can't put that many holes in it to let all the sound out and have it not collapse under its own weight.
And, they're overwhelmingly, they're vinyl screens. They're not woven like the ones that we get for home use. So IllunaVision actually had a nice little graphic, so I'm showing that on the YouTube video. So over on the far right side, that's your traditional vinyl perforated screen. And it's a screen. It's a vinyl screen with holes punched in it.
So this is a photo taken 2 feet away from the projected image, and if you can't see this, I mean, the holes are. It looks like somebody took like a hole punch from your, you just punch a hole in paper and just punched holes like at an inch apart.
Yeah, but there's also a substantial amount of solid material in between each of the holes.
Yeah,
but that's necessary for the structural integrity of your 30 to 50 foot screen.
Right, sure.
That's just something that has to be done. So yeah, there's a substantial amount of sound being blocked. Now, as you move farther and farther to the right in this image, you're seeing tighter and tighter weaves. So one is a micro perforated screen next to that, which is something you might get at home, what they call a micro perforated screen with much smaller perforations, much closer together.
Am I seeing a different image? Because mine's going left. Like the big holes are on the right.
Yeah, the big holes are on the right, and as you go to the left. Sorry.
Left. Okay,
yeah.
You just said right.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Screwed up in my speaking.
It's all right.
But yeah, you got a normal perforated screen on the far right. To the left of that, you have a micro perforated screen, and then you start getting into the woven screens. Right. And they're showing, IllunaVision is showing their own woven screen on the far left, which is the tightest, smallest, most closely bunched together holes of them all, and that's what they're claiming allows it to be the most acoustically transparent while being able to handle full 4K resolution even when you're sitting pretty close to the screen, because this is, like they're saying, this is from 2 feet away, and you can see the little holes from 2 feet away, but if you were, say, 10 feet away, you'd still be able to see the holes in the perforated screen on the far right, but not in the tightly woven screen on the far left. So it is substantially different screen technology that we're using at home versus what's being used in a full-sized movie theater.
Yeah, which is also why when you enable the THX REQ for THX certified receivers, it rolls off the high end of your movies by 3 dB. Why? Because most movie content has got a high-end boost because they're trying to combat the screen issue that we're talking about here, right? Plus, they're awfully far away from you.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people between you and them. So there's a lot of stuff they're combating. So they kind of roll that off. Now, most of us don't think that's necessary, but...
For movies that are remastered for the home release, they already include less high-frequency energy than the cinema mix.
But THX just want to make sure, and they got to be different. So whatever. Manuel has a pair of Sony Acoustics, a Sierra 2, and he'd like to expand to surround sound. He doesn't have the budget to get more Sierra speakers, though, and he needs to mount his speakers up fairly high. So he's thinking the SVS Prime elevation speakers might be a good option. Is he correct that he should be able to mount them up fairly high without needing additional special mounting hardware? And will the SVS Prime elevation and Ascend Sierra 2 play well together? Are they too much of a mismatch? As far as mounting them up high, they are literally designed exactly for that.
That is what they are for. Yes.
It's like saying, it's like asking if a pickup truck is good for hauling dirt. Yeah, it is literally what its job is. So as far as matching, Rob can speak more to that, but the mounting is absolutely not going to be a problem. In fact, if you're like me, you're not going to trust that you can mount them as high as you actually can, and there's going to be a gap between your speakers and the ceiling. An unnecessary gap that I am now dealing with for the rest of my life, because I'm not going to go up there and move that thing.
And they do include the mounting hardware that you will need.
Everything is included.
You don't have to buy any additional hardware with those. They would be a perfectly reasonable match. They are by no means a large mismatch. Now, if you set up the prime elevations as your front, left, right speakers and A/B compared them, switching back and forth instantaneously, no, they do not perfectly timbre match. Yeah. But as your surrounds in an elevated, somewhat compromised position anyway, both of them are pretty darn neutral speakers. They're by no means a huge mismatch. Very far from being offensively different or anything like that. So I'd be completely happy with those. I will say, if you wanted... I think the Focal Birds match quite nicely. Again, they're not a perfect timbre match, but they match quite nicely, and those include the mounts, and you could fully swivel them and aim them however you want to.
But the SVS is just like, you could get so tied up in that corner.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean? If that's what he's doing with them, if they're going to be like right up at the ceiling level, it's the Focal Birds, well, they're great. I've got some. They never are going to look as good.
Yeah, they're not going to be as flush to the wall and the ceiling. Yeah.
So both will be fine. I'm surprised you didn't suggest like the HTM whatever that you don't really suggest. But
Ascend Zone HTM 200 SEs, but those you would have to buy separate mounting hardware, which it sounds like he doesn't want to deal with. Yeah. So I mean, if you were leaning SVS Prime elevations, do that.
That's fine.
That's a simple thing. If you wanted something that doesn't look like those and you wanted something that's more of a swivel mount, then I'll just mention that the Focal birds would be a good alternative without costing you extra. So that's all. Yeah.
Jason wrote us previously asking if buying a refurbished Integra receiver from Accessories for Less would help improve his dialogue intelligibility. He had built some DIY main and center speakers and had them connected to an old home theater in a box receiver that didn't even have HDMI. So he's going to get a new receiver regardless. We suggested a different receiver model from Denon and Yamaha. We also suggested repositioning the center speaker, possibly repositioning the seats, and potentially needing some room treatments. But he said he was impatient, didn't wait to hear our answer. So he wound up...
Well, sometimes we do take a while to answer, so I can't blame you.
2 weeks max. I swear, no one ever writes this podcast and doesn't hear their question answered within 2 weeks. It almost never happens. Even with a week off because of a holiday, you usually hear your question answered within 2 weeks. I understand your impatience, and I'm not judging you because, believe me, I am totally that dude. Like, I will ask the question after I've already made the purchase. So I got that, but still. So he wound up with Integra receiver anyways, and thankfully just that and a tweak to the center speaker placement was enough to improve dialogue situation. So he and his wife are happy with how things sound on that front. That's good.
Good.
Next up, so I'm going to go with the changing of the location of the
I think
center.
Nudging the center forward, because in the image, it's recessed on the table.
Right.
I think just nudging it forward is actually all that was needed.
What did it? But I'm glad you have HDMI now.
Yes.
Next up, he built a new subwoofer using a Dayton reference 12-inch driver in a sealed 1.7 cubic foot box. He did not build the amplifier into the subwoofer enclosure, so he's able to use whatever external amp he likes. The Dayton driver is rated at 400 watts RMS with an 800 watt peak. He started with a $150 Behringer iNuke NU1000. The amp offers 2 channels, 300 watts into each, into 4 ohms, which is rated the rated impedance that of the Dayton driver. So, or it can be bridged to offer 1,000 watts into 4 ohms. He just started with one 300 watt channel powering a sub and was able to play louder than he needed, enough to cause pain. Don't know how you figure that out, but okay. And he didn't notice any distortion whatsoever, so he doesn't need the 1,000 watt bridged mode to be able to hit those 800 watt peaks, right? Dude, if you can cause pain, no. You don't need
Was
it.
the pain being caused by distortion? It's very hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but I would think that the
Regardless.
distortion wouldn't be coming from the amplifier. I mean, it's going to be coming...
Well, it would be the thing stressing, asking for more.
I'm going to say this. What are you going to do with that other channel? If the answer is nothing, bridge it.
Yeah, might as well. It doesn't hurt anything.
It's not going to hurt anything. You're not going to blow up your subwoofer.
Get another 4 decibels of headroom just in case.
Yeah, I if you're not going to do anything with it, bridge it. If you do have something to do with it, you're probably fine.
And I did just want to mention for the people who are able to see the images on YouTube, he made these cabinets himself.
I know, they're really nice.
That's impressive cabinet work. That's very nice looking stuff. I like that.
And this is the thing, man. If you like doing this stuff and you can do this stuff, yeah, I mean, you can save some real cash by making your own stuff. But most people doesn't look this good.
That's right. See, it wouldn't. If I did it, it would take me way longer, cost me more, and look horrible. Which is why I just buy complete subs, even though that costs a lot more than DIY. I just don't have the skills or the time or the inclination to make my own. Yeah.
So the Behringer amp has cooling fans, and they're a bit louder than he'd like. He tends to keep it because he can use it for the subs. He'll build it for his dedicated basement theater where the equipment can be hidden in the gear closet. So what amp can we recommend for his family room setup that will run silently and provide enough power for his Dayton sub? So there are like tons of pro amps out there, like Crown, right? And what's the other one that's everybody always talks about? No, it wasn't it. That's the one I was thinking of. But anyways, they most of them have fans, just like this Behringer does. But they do offer models that don't. So you could look into one of those, because just about any of those will be just fine to run a subwoofer.
It's harder to find those pro amps that don't have fans.
I remember looking into it at one point, and I mean, you will save some money. I don't know that you save all that much compared to... I mean, compared to buying something like an Emotiva, which would be way overkill. You don't.
Oh well, especially and in this case, I mean, you do want, I would say, at least a genuine 200 watts into 4 ohms.
Yeah. The 4 ohms or just 8? Yeah, 4 ohms.
At least, in 4 ohms. It's a 4 ohm driver, so you want at least a genuine 200, if not 300 watts into the 4 ohm load. So you're going into the higher end,
right,
of what would be full range amplifier. So that seems unnecessary to me and kind of inefficient because you really only need the sub frequency. So Dayton themselves sell subwoofer amps that are like, could go in a rack or just are standalone.
Right.
So for around $200, they have a 230 watt model, the Dayton SA230. You can get it from Parts Express or get it directly from Dayton if you want to. Now that's actually more money than he paid for less wattage, but that's because it's a Class AB amplifier and that one is passively cooled.
Okay.
So that's one option. But I was thinking, he's so good at building cabinets for stuff. Would it really be that bad to just buy a plate amplifier, the type that's designed to be built into the back of a cabinet? Now, he's not actually going to build it into the back of his subwoofer cabinet, but maybe he just makes himself a nice little box to hold the plate amplifier because he's so good at the cabinet work anyway.
Right.
And then you could get a less expensive, you could get a bash amplifier, which would be a great
Bash literally is the amplifier that everybody uses if they don't make their own.
That's right.
If you don't make your own subwoofer amplifier, you use Bash.
So I mean, Bash
SBS used Bash forever.
Oh yeah, and HSU still uses them. That's who they use is Bash amplifiers. So they have a 300 watt plate amplifier that's $145, so slightly cheaper than the Behringer iNuke that you bought. Plenty of power. It's meant for subwoofers. It's not in its own rack ready or freestanding case, but I'm like, he's so good at building cases.
You need to do? You need to build a little case for it, right?
Yeah.
A little case for it. And it's set right next to the subwoofer.
Maybe.
Like on like little AVRant mouse pads.
Oh, yeah.
Loudspeaker isolation pads. A couple of those. I'll give you a deal. A 2-for-1. $200. 2-for-1, man. I'll hook you up.
So yeah, I'm inclined to go that way. Just get a subwoofer plate amplifier, a Bash amplifier that's going to be rock solid for driving your sub, and make your own cabinet to hold it because you're already good at doing it.
I actually think that's a really good idea. If you're not going to put the subwoofer, the amp inside the sub, if you can, you could actually build the thing into the wall if you wanted to.
Sure.
I mean, you could build it, put it wherever you want.
Whatever you want, whatever design you want. Yeah.
I think it might be the best idea there. All right. Charleston. That's Charleston. I am reading that correctly. All right. Charleston is wiring 2 pairs of surround speakers to cover his 2 rows of seats. He's seen conflicting advice on whether to wire the pairs to his Emotiva amp in series or in parallel. What do we think is best? We think series is best, right?
Yes.
We think series is best?
Yes.
Because you're
that's the safe answer.
Doubling the impedance.
Yes.
So that it actually makes it an easier load on the amplifier, but you have to be able to put out more power, but you're sitting like 2 feet away from these things. So
yeah, the reason you might be seeing conflicting advice is because I don't know the impedance of these speakers, but
that's true. Most
speakers are 8 ohm speakers.
Right.
And by the looks of these speakers, there's nothing that would make me think they're not 8 ohm, although they might be something. They could be 6 ohm or 4 ohm or something, but they're probably 8 ohm speakers. You are sitting very close to them. And your Emotiva amp would have no trouble driving a 4 ohm load, which is what would happen if you wired 2 8 ohm speakers in parallel. And all you're doing there is
in parallel, just so that people know, you're basically taking the wires from like the black wire from one speaker and the black wire from another speaker, twisting them together and putting it into the black,
output of your amplifier.
Bounding of the amplifier. Same thing with the red. So the amplifier is being connected to both speakers at the same time. That takes 8 ohms and turns it into 4 ohms.
Correct.
It takes 4 ohms, turns it into 2 ohms.
Right.
Halves. Now, when you go 8 ohms to 4 ohms, most amplifiers aren't going to have a problem with that.
And the Emotiva definitely won't.
Definitely won't. But when
Absolutely
you go 4 ohms into 2 ohms, you're going to cause some
or
problems.
even 2 6 ohm speakers into 3 ohms.
3 ohms is not
little hinky.
Now, the Emotiva would probably still be fine because you're not putting out that much power.
And you're very close to these speakers.
Yeah, because you don't need that much power because of how close you are. But why? Why would you take the chance when you could just wire them in parallel? So when you wire, not parallel, in series.
In series,
When you're in
yeah.
series, you wire the amplifier, and Rob will tell you how.
Yes.
The amplifier to the first speaker to the second speaker back to the amplifier. So that if you think about it, it just makes a circuit all the way through both
That's
of
right.
these things. That takes the 8 ohms and turns it into 16 ohms. In 16 ohms, big numbers are easier to drive than lower numbers, but the amount of power you have to put in to get the same amount of sound is also increased. So, but you're sitting close. So who cares?
Yes. Yeah, so to wire in series, so start with the red binding post output from your amplifier. You take one wire from that red output of the amplifier, it goes to the red input of speaker number 1.
Yep.
Then the black input of speaker number 1, that actually gets connected to the red input of speaker number 2. So it went straight through that way, one wire going in a line, and then the black input of speaker number 2 goes back to the black output of the amplifier. So it's like
Making
one
a
wire
circuit.
that's going all the way through. That is series. So yeah, what results there is you need more voltage, but the exact same amount of current as driving one speaker, whereas when you wire in parallel, you need twice the amount of current. And it's harder to generate more current than it is to generate more voltage. Generating more voltage is quite easy. Generating more current is more difficult. So it's almost always the safest bet to just wire in series.
That being said, it's probably not.
Yeah, exactly. The people who are saying in your situation, Charleston, with your Emotiva amplifier and these speakers, which are probably 8 ohm, and sitting this close to them, that if you were to wire them in parallel, you're probably just fine. And we agree that you are probably just fine.
Anybody saying that there's going to be an audible difference between the two
no.
is a crazy person, unless they're saying because your amp will clip and if you wire them parallel. If they're saying anything else about how series is worse than parallel for sonic reasons, that person is a crazy person you shouldn't be listening to. But other than that, you'll be all right. Dan just bought a new ELAC debut center speaker. His TV is mounted above his fireplace, and he uses the mount, and he uses a mount that lets him pull the TV forward and down in front of his mantle. That's great for his viewing, but it seriously limits his center placement speaker options. So right now it's on top of the equipment stand off to the right, in the right corner of the room, which is less
not
than
in the
ideal.
center at all.
Is it really?
His center speaker is to the right of his front right speaker.
Oh,
It's
why
way
even
over
have
there.
it?
Yeah.
So what ideas do we have for getting better placement options that involve buying a different speaker or is welcome as well? He likes the sound of the ELAC, but he's not married to it. You need a sound bar that attaches to the bottom of your TV.
Or just, a narrow, what would probably a wall-mountable slim center speaker
Yeah.
to attach. So they actually have center, or they usually call them soundbar mount adapters for TV wall mounts. So they basically just look like L-shaped pieces of metal. They actually get secured to the back of your television with the very same screws that are attaching your TV wall mount, which we know you have, because you have this mount that... I like those mounts, by the way, for over the fireplace where you can pull
Yeah, they
it,
are.
pull
They're
it
very
down.
nice. I've seen those. Yeah.
But it does look like when it's in the upward position, I don't know if that is still forward of the mantle. You can't tell because we're looking at it straight on.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell.
If the TV is, I'm saying when it's in its upward position, if the TV is still in front of the mantle, then you could put the center speaker, a slim one I'm talking about, a slim style wall mountable one, you could have that below the TV. It doesn't look like it has a whole lot of space above the TV, but it looks like enough to hold a slim center speaker, so you could mount it above the TV.
Yeah.
And then when you pull it down, so the center speaker is going to be physically moving along with the television.
The TV. Yeah. That's 100% my suggestion too. And I said like a sound bar simply because there's going to be a sound bar guaranteed that is the size of your TV, and it's probably meant to be worked with your TV. And
but he's already got these front towers, so I'm assuming he doesn't want to supplant those with a
no. But I mean, you don't
soundboard.
hook up. You're just going to hook up the center. It's part of it.
I see.
Or or have it play all center the same content through all three of the.
Well, that's possible. Yeah.
You're not going to have it supplant that. You're just going to give it the center information to play. I mean, if you want to get really nasty with this and like really do it, you can contact Leon speakers, they make custom stuff like this all the time.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
that are absolutely 100% the size of your TV. That will work exactly right. And you say, all I want is a nice big center channel up on this thing, and that's exactly what they'll give you. Now, it won't be cheap.
Right.
It'll be a lot more than this ELAC thing that you bought, but and that's a crazy suggestion that I don't believe that you're going to take, but it is a possibility. And who was it RBH that came out with the new speaker that changes widths?
Yeah, RBH does have their Ultra series on walls, but they have like sort of on wall, like almost bookshelf sized ones, except they're narrow. And then they have one that is 3 speakers in one bar.
Yeah.
And that's the one you can customize the width.
Yeah.
But again, now you're either not using 2 sets of those drivers, or you're having all 3 of them play the same signal. It's kind of...
I'll be honest with you. I mean, the setup is kind of clean looking.
Yep.
I mean, other than the fact that there's a speaker off to the side, doesn't make any sense. But I want the bar to be the right size. More than anything, I want the bar. I don't want just a speaker.
But I mean, if it's nice and
out.
slim, it doesn't have to be the exact same width as the TV.
I kind of think it does.
So I had one suggestion, because when I was looking for slim wall mountable center speakers, I had a heck of a time finding any that I actually thought sounded half decent.
Right.
And I basically found one, which is Revel's Concerta C10 on wall center speaker. It's nice and slim. It includes a wall bracket that would attach just fine to those L-shaped metal brackets that are meant to hold a sound bar onto your TV wall mount. So it has the correct hardware that'll work, and that bracket then allows you to tilt the center speaker up or down.
Right.
So it has all the features you would need. The problem is it's $500.
It's a little bit more expensive than that ELAC.
It is. Although it's not, at least it's not astronomically expensive, and it sounds good. It's got the right form factor. It's got all the hardware.
He could just
you
take
need
the
to make
ELAC
this
and
work.
attach it to the top of this thing, right? I mean, when it came right down to it.
That'd be a bit of a thing. You'd need to work in some brackets to attach to that, because that's a full-sized center speaker. And then I'm not sure if he actually physically has room, because if when this TV is in its upright position, if it is not in front of the mantle, then that ain't gonna work, and he doesn't have very much room above it when
I'm looking at that
raised.
right now. I can't tell. Does that thing have a? It looks like it has a. It's right near the roof, right? With that little.
Well, he's got like a tray ceiling, so he's got like a soffit that's
ceiling
going all the way around, and I think the TV is under, when it's in its upright position.
There was another company named Artisan that used to make speakers that would go along the sides of your TV too, and you could maybe
Magnapans.
Let's just go with Magnapans, right?
But
sure.
then that's way more expensive
money.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, I keep coming back to the Revel because it has all the features you need, and $500, while expensive, is not completely out of the realm of possibility.
What about those thin on-wall Kefs?
See, they're super skinny from front to back, but they're actually kind of tall,
wide. Yeah.
I know, man.
Well, okay. You might have to do this. You might have to keep your TV in front of your mantle from now on.
All the time. Defeating the whole
just
purpose.
so that I mean, it doesn't have to be like in front of, like as far down, but I mean just like physically like up high, but just forward enough so that your speaker can hang below it.
I say get the Revel.
Or you could get two side speakers, one on either side of your TV,
and run them in mono,
and run each one in mono, playing in series. Center. You can wire them in series as your center channel.
Could do that.
No matter what, the other option, which is probably the cheapest and maybe the option you should go with, is just unplugging that ELAC speaker and not using a center channel.
Going Phantom. Just going Phantom.
Because that's certainly better than having the stuff that's supposed to be coming from the TV coming from,
or just never turn on your fireplace and put a center speaker stand right in front of the thing. I'm sure that'll go over with the aesthetics committee.
Oh, come on, man. Just every time you're watching TV, just wheel in a center channel. Put it on a little tray.
Well, he does have to walk up there to pull the TV down anyway.
You're doing it anyways. Put it on the mantle behind the thing, and then there's a little stand off to the side. Bring the stand out. Boom. Done. Bob's your uncle. I don't even know what that means, Bob's your uncle. Where did that come from?
I don't know. It's a saying.
Bob's your uncle.
I'm Robert. I could be called Bob, and I am an uncle. So there you go. It's
I'm
true
right.
for my niece and nephew.
I'm
Bob
trying to
is
think
their
about
uncle.
it. I have a lot of family. I don't have an Uncle Bob, though. My mom was one of 11, but there's only 2 boys, and it was David and Jerry. So I got no Bobs. Oh, well. Dave from Twitter. Dave picked up a refurbished Martin Logan Motion Vision soundbar that did not include the remote. He figured he just uses Harmony 1. The Motion Vision soundbar has a subwoofer output, so he connected his Dynamo 300 sub, but no sound came out of the sub. He knows the Dynamo 300 is functional. Any ideas? Did he get the Harmony remote working?
Right.
That's going to be the first question I'm going to ask is there some button you're supposed to press to make this thing work?
So I found the manual for the
Yeah.
Mountain Logan Vision soundbar, Motion Vision soundbar, and it does say in there that there are 3 settings for the subwoofer output.
But one of them's off.
One of them is off. Don't use it at all. One of them is wireless, which is the default.
Oh, geez.
And then the third one is wired. And you must change it to wired if you are plugging it into the subwoofer output. So I wasn't sure because, I mean, there's basically a menu button. On the original remote, there's a menu button. And menu then lets you go to settings, which then lets you go to subwoofer out,
So
which
this thing
then
has to
lets
have
you
a
cycle
it has
through.
to have a it has to have a display on it, or you have to connect to the TV or something.
I'm not
It
exactly
must.
sure how. It must
It
have
must.
a little indicator, but I mean, I was just going by what the manual said. So you at the minimum, you needed a menu key and arrow keys and an enter key, which it sounds like from a little bit of back and forth I did on Twitter, it does sound like that happened because he was like, "Yeah, it was in wireless," which makes sense. That's the default setting.
Right.
So by default, they've set it to be a wireless sub. They do have a sub that's
Goes with it.
optionally you can buy that goes with this, so that kind of makes sense. But he had a regular sub that is wired, just had to switch it to the wired connection, and that should take care of that. Yes.
So do we know of any full 18 gigabits per second HDCP 2.2, HDMI 2.0 rack mountable HDMI switches that aren't ridiculously expensive? I mean, anything's rack mountable if you try hard enough. I'm just gonna put that out there as
That was the part that was tripping me, was it wanting the rack ears built in.
right. Why you gotta have rack ears? I mean, there's lots of things that you could just. You know what you could get in a rack? A shelf. You know what you can put on a shelf?
Yeah.
A switch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because I was
So-
like, I've never seen a rack that does not have the option to make to have a shelf.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
rack mountable?
get a shelf. Then I would get what are my favorite HDMI switches that have the full 18 gigabits of bandwidth and HDCP 2.2 and handle HDR and all that, which is Sewell's switch deck.
Right.
So Sewell has a 5-in, 1-out HDMI 2.0 with HDCP 2.2 switch deck, and I believe it's $65, which I do not count as ridiculously expensive. I don't know, that's the largest one they have is 5-in, 1-out of that.
Yeah.
So that may or may not be enough,
Right.
but you could get 2 of them if you need more.
Put them side by side on the shelf. It'll look
Yes.
more like it was rack mounted. I don't know.
But
I
it's
mean,
it's not a rack mountable design.
Yeah.
It's definitely smaller. It doesn't come with rack ears, so you'd have to put it on a shelf. I mean, I was looking at Geffen because I was like, of all the companies, it's probably going to be Geffen. But the only ones they have that are actually like full rack mount with included rack ears are like their matrix switchers.
Right.
Their
right,
regular
right, right.
switchers are like, it looks like they're meant to be like screwed onto a wall. Like that's what they look like.
Oh, so they're probably mounted behind a TV, maybe.
Yeah, they're kind of like flat and they have
Yeah.
like screw holes. It looks like you're just supposed to like, vertically install them on a wall. So even so yeah, he was pointing to like DVDO has one, but it's like $800 or
Right,
something stupid,
sure.
you know? So I'm like, yeah, I'd install a shelf and I'd put in a Sewell switch deck. That's what I would do.
I mean, if the problem is you want it to be nice and secure and that with the rack, just super glue the thing to the shelf.
We are not super helpful on this one. I'm sorry. I wonder if
Oh, it's so bad. Just like, just super glued it down. And then I put some duct tape
what's
around
that
it.
what's that custom installer company that James Bujol always recommends? Snap AV.
Oh, Snap AV.
I wonder
Yeah.
if they have. I mean, you wouldn't be able to buy it yourself. You'd have to get it from an installer. But I wonder.
All right,
if
so
they
either
have
get a
something.
shelf and get the ones that he's recommending, or call Snap AV. That's our recommendation.
Yeah, that's going to be your best bet because everybody else is either going to be stupid expensive for no good reason or more expensive than the Sewell for no good reason.
It's all no good reason. When it comes to stuff like this, it's because of who the clients are.
Yeah.
The clients are not using their money, or they have so much money it doesn't feel like their money when they buy stuff like this. So no one cares. No one cares what the prices were. So I don't want to reveal too much because this is a person who's a friend of mine, and he works for, I don't know if it's a hospital or not, but it's in the medical industry, and he does some purchasing. And he started talking about cables that he had to purchase that were very similar to an HDMI cable.
Sure.
And he was like, I just can't believe how expensive some of this stuff is. and it's simply because of the business that he's in. It's ridiculously expensive. And this is exactly what I mean. The fact that something's rack mountable suddenly increases the price like 5,000 fold.
They sell far fewer of them. So
yeah. All right, Ken on Facebook. So we have a 13.2 channel AV receiver from Denon now. Why is it still only 0.2? If we're going to have that many speakers, aren't we definitely going to do 4 subs? What are they going to put out next year, dude? What are they going to do next year?
Plus,
you can't blow all your wad in 2018 when you know 2019 is just around the corner.
If those are all going to be independently volume and distance set as well, that's some extra processing on top of that. Onkyo did have 4 subwoofer output plugs at one point.
Yeah, they're all mono, weren't they?
No, they were...
Were they stereo?
Stereo, but so stereo and then split.
Right.
So you had 2 for one
Fronts
side and 2
backs,
for the other side.
yeah.
But they did have 4 plugs on the back, so it has been done. It's not unprecedented.
Well, I mean, okay, Ken, my thought on this is most of the time for people who are rocking 4 subs, 2 of the subs are almost always the same distance from the seated location. They're both at the back of the room, they're both on the sides of the room, they're both in the front of the room, something like that.
Equidistant.
Where the distance is negligible. We don't need 4 independently
I mean, that's what you add $100 mini DSP for if you want to. Then you can have it all 4 independent or more. You can go more than 4 if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, hey, they are adding stuff to receivers. I
did not expect to see 13 amplifiers in a. I mean, $4,000 is crazy expensive, but it's still consumer level. It's not $30,000 like the Trinov.
Yeah.
I'm amazed to see 13 amplifiers.
I just hope. I would like to see. I'm looking forward to Gene's tests of those amplifiers to see when we start seeing distortion and artifacting.
The 6400 that's out there right now with its 11 amps built in. I mean, it's pretty darn solid, driving all 11 speakers. So
I would assume that Denon would do a good job with it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll see. Steven in Australia. Steven is looking to replace the 65-inch Sony 65X900A.
That's the TV I have.
LCD TV with either an LG C8 or a Sony A8F OLED. That's the new one.
Those are the new ones.
Yeah.
Brand new.
When they are released in the next few months. There are still a lot of TV broadcasts in 576i in Australia, so upscaling is important. He knows that the Sony will upscale well, but he isn't sure about the LG. How will the new A9 processor stack up against Sony's X1 Extreme processor? All the demos of the LG's OLEDs he's seen were always showing pristine 4K HDR native content, and the sales guys never seemed keen to allow, I love the word keen, to allow him to plug in his own content for testing. So what do we think? We think you stop being a nice Aussie and start being a little bogan and just say, I'm going to plug it in anyways, or I'm not going to buy this thing. Honestly, dude, scaling is so, I mean, it's kind of they kind of can do it pretty good, like all of them, right? I mean, I don't know.
So,
How's
I mean,
the OLED?
what's interesting, like Vincent Teo over at HDTV Test, and he's based in the UK, so he's getting some of this 576i resolution type stuff too.
Right.
So he's tested a lot of this quite extensively. And what's interesting is, on a very technical level, the LGs, even the current ones, which don't have this new A9 processor, which is beefed up for 2018, but the current ones, the 2017 models, they are technically doing it very correctly. Meaning they're not adding a bunch of extra edge enhancement. They're not messing with the motion. They're just doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Although, I mean, there are options to add extra noise reduction and stuff all like that, but they're capable of doing it very, very cleanly. And one nice thing that the brand new 2018 models like the C8 that you're considering are going to have is black frame insertion, which means that their motion should look even smoother.
Yeah.
It should be less blurring because they're going to do black frame insertion on the brand new 2018 models. So from a very technical point of view, LG is doing it correctly and should have very nice, smooth-looking motion this year. That said, in terms of just pleasingness to the eye, Vincent did sort of prefer the Sonys because they are actually kind of messing with the signal a little bit. They're doing some extra stuff in there, enhancing the contrast, enhancing the edges a little bit, smoothing some things that aren't technically supposed to be smooth, but it looks better when you do. So it's a little bit of a matter of taste because the LG's
I think you just sold him on the Sony.
Well, and plus he already has a Sony, so he's used to their processing.
You basically sold him on the Sony.
Yeah.
To me, you sold me on the LG.
Yeah, and it would be me too, but I actually I almost like seeing the errors because then I know that error is in the source, not the TV creating it.
Right, yeah.
But if you just don't want to see the error and you're okay with the TV kind of messing with it in order to make that happen. I mean, the other thing is like how they handle HDR, right?
Right.
LG's tone mapping is like rigid to what I think is the correct way, which is we are going to show you all the detail. That might mean the image looks a little bit dim sometimes because if it was mastered to 4,000 nits, we are not going to throw away any data. We are going to show you that 4,000 nit highlight. We're just going to do it at the 800 nits we can actually do and then squeeze everything down right along the PQ curve to fit that whole signal. Whereas Sony said, we want to keep the average brightness of the image at a certain level. And if that means clipping off some of the very brightest content, that's what we're going to do. And that's not right or wrong. That's a choice.
Right, sure.
And some people prefer the overall brighter looking image of the Sony, even though it clips off a little detail. And some people prefer the LG that retains all the detail, but might look a little dimmer to do it.
I'd be interested to hear what he ends up buying.
Yeah.
My guess is that he's going to stick with the Sony. He's already got a Sony.
You very well
He
might.
knows the Sony. I'd be leaning towards the LG myself, but I think the reality is what I basically just said, which is scaling is not rocket science. Everybody knows how to do it at this point. We stopped when we did projector reviews. We're practically stopped testing calibration anymore. Everything's coming out looking pretty good. You just set it to warm and you go with it. It's very easy. It used to be a real deal.
Oh yeah.
It is not any longer. And scaling is the same thing. Everybody can scale. Everybody does the basic 3D pull down, all that other stuff that you have to do. That stuff happens without the deinterlacing, all that. That stuff happens. And with most of the content you're going to come across, it's never going to be an issue. Somebody's going to say, "Oh, well, I played this home movie that I filmed on whatever the heck it was, and it came out all weird with all these artifacts all over it." Well, you're weird for even trying to play it. So,
but if you heard everything that I said about the LG, and to you, Stephen, that actually sounds enticing, I will say the one other thing that is an advantage for the LG is they are the only way, if you're watching Netflix, to get Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos audio at the same time.
Okay.
There are no other TVs that are outputting the Dolby Atmos bitstream. The Xbox One,
which means you could watch that Bright movie in both.
That's right.
They have
both.
that. They have that in both.
Or Okja, which is in both.
Still haven't seen. I haven't seen either of those movies. That
Okja was
movie
fun. I liked it.
It seemed a little preachy to me, and I don't like to be preached at by my movie.
I mean, it's so silly that it's.
Well, I understand that, and Up is really preachy too. But I watched Up the other day, and Doug is awesome.
Yes.
So there we go. Johnny. It's time for Johnny to buy a new receiver. His 10-year-plus old Yamaha RX V2700 has been great. Sorry, but it only has 3 HDMI ports, which isn't enough anymore, and can't pass 4K to a Samsung 4K TV. which is a 2014 model. So
I don't think any HDR,
yeah,
but
it's not
4K
gonna have any of that
resolution.
stuff. Yeah, it's not 4K resolution. So he knows nothing is future proof, but he'd like to get another 10 years or so. And nothing's going to be 10 years. If you bought the brand,
it could be to you. You just don't have
I'm
to
not going
upgrade.
to say, as far as future proof, like
Right.
even, we're not talking about future proof right now. We're talking, because 10 years, no, nothing is that future proof. I don't expect cars to last 10 years, to be honest with you, though mine has much longer than 10 years. But he wants to take his future plans into account. He'd like to add a second sub to the room and possibly a pair of overhead speakers to make a 5.2.2 system. And the next TV purchase will likely be HDR as well as 4K. If you are going to wait a couple of years to get a new TV, you're right. It's going to be. That's all the only options you're going to have. He's looking at the Denon AVRX 1300W, which is $300, and the 2300W, which is $370 from accessories for less. There are some unimportant differences, like a bit more amp power, not really needed with this HSU HB1 speakers. Extra inputs, which would likely go unused. But he's more unclear about the X2300W, also providing both 1080p and 4K upscaling as well as ISF certification settings. Would these actually make a noticeable difference in its picture quality?
You're going to bypass them anyway.
Nope. Not even a little bit. Okay, what I just said about how we don't even test calibration of screens anymore. That makes the ISF certification settings moot. And the 4K upscaling, if you're going to be buying a player that does 4K, it don't need to be upscaled.
And your TV is going to upscale everything to 4K anyway, and probably do it just as well, if not better, than these Denon receivers would. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that is not a reason to pay more for the 2300 over the 1300.
Right. So he wants to know if there are any other noticeable differences he's missing. Are there any brands he should be looking at? So which receiver should he buy? I don't know about any of the differences. I never got anywhere near the bottom of this. We were like burning through these questions. So is there any differences he's missing, Rob?
There's something extra with Zone 2 in the
Who cares?
X2300. He didn't mention anything about zones.
No.
The X2300 has 2 HDMI outputs, but they're just mirrored. So if you have a projector and a display and you want to connect them both, then it can do that. 1300 can't.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, honestly, for what you need, as long as
you say you need,
as long as 6 HDMI inputs are going to be enough, then the 1300 should cover everything that you've talked about.
I'll be honest with you. I think we're going away from needing all these HDMI inputs. I think we're getting further and further away from needing this many inputs because we're finding more. I mean, your devices really.
Like your TV is doing all the streaming itself, so you don't even need an extra set-top box.
You don't need that. You don't have a set-top box. You got a couple of game consoles, maybe. You know, I'm down to. I have 2 HDMI cables plugged into the back of my receiver, and I only really use one. And that's a sad thing.
That's your Xbox, right?
That's my Xbox. That's
most.
right.
I mean, am I a terrible person for suggesting spending $500 on the X3300W so that you can get multi-Q XT32?
That is really the one thing I would highly recommend.
I mean, these have the ones he's talking about, the X1300 and 2300. They have multi-Q XT, which is good. It's good. Yeah.
But why? You can get basically. Think about this. If you spend the money to get the 3300, you're going to get the same Odyssey that's in the flagship $4,000 Denon receiver right now.
And the independent dual subwoofer calibration. He says he wants 2 subs.
Yeah.
And a full set of pre-outs in case you ever do want external amps.
Yeah, more options for overhead speakers as well, right? He can
no, it's still just 0.2.
Is it still 5.2.2?
Still limited to 5.2.2 with that.
Yeah. I really think the Odyssey is worth it. For me, I mean, obviously, I think it's worth
being able to get it for $500 is so enticing. Like, I didn't think that was going to be a possibility, and here it is.
I mean, when I first started looking at receivers that had XT32, I mean, I expected that I couldn't get it for less than $1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what. No matter what, it was never going to be less than the grand.
So I think we're saying either spend more and go up to the 3300, or
spend
get the 1300, because that has what you need and barely anything more. And then the 3300 gives you a step up in the room correction, plus some other features that you may or may not use. The 2300 ends up kind of being the odd man out in your case, because it has some features that will be very useful to some people, but it doesn't sound like in your situation it will be. So at
least not yet.
Yeah.
Who knows? You talk about keeping this thing for 10 years.
And it's only $70 more. So
right. Robert has been doing some measurements with Room EQ Wizard and using the Odyssey Editor app in an effort to get a flatter response from a 7.2.4 system. Room EQ Wizard lets him measure 7 channels, but he can't figure out a way to measure just the overhead Atmos speakers by themselves. Is there a way to do this, or has he found a limitation of Room EQ Wizard? He can't just connect the Atmos speakers to the other channel posts like he would for normal roll-off testing and to set crossovers, because he'll lose the specific Odyssey EQ settings for those overhead channels. And that's what he wants to measure and confirm. His receiver is a Denon AVR X4300H with an Outlaw Model 5000 amp. So what he wants to do is he wants to send a sweep through his Atmos speakers while Odyssey is on, so he can't just change it to a different setting, because different output. Wow, I don't know how to do that.
I don't either. I think you have found a limitation, because right now Room EQ Wizard doesn't have the ability to send out
metadata.
Overhead channel sweeps. Like, that's not a channel it can identify in itself.
It's not a channel, though. It never has been. So it would have to be the metadata that basically the
sent as an object
that places it directly in that speaker and nothing else.
Yeah.
And that would be very hard to do, I would think.
And even if you, because I was thinking, could you physically disconnect all other speakers?
Yeah.
And then use
Odyssey.
the party mode? But party mode applies some filtering. It doesn't just replicate the sound out of all speakers. So even that doesn't really work. I don't know a good way to do this, Robert. You stumped me. I don't know a reliable way to do this. Yeah.
It couldn't do like the all channels or 7 channels or party mode.
Yeah, because they do apply a filter to those, so it doesn't come out as just exactly the same signal from all speakers, unfortunately. Yeah. There's no way to do this with analog inputs. They don't exist.
Could he plug in the speakers as if they were, let's say he's got 4 overhead speakers.
4 overhead speakers, sure.
So plug in them, make them fronts and surrounds.
Right.
No overheads. Run Odyssey.
Yeah.
Then run the sweeps.
Now
and
that
then change them back.
That would allow him to see what Odyssey is doing to correct
for the placement
speakers as though they were fronts and surrounds.
Right.
Now
but
we don't
know what we don't know what the curve is being applied, or what's being applied to the overhead speakers.
Plus, the whole idea is he wants to confirm that what Odyssey has done to his actual Atmos setup is to his liking, and this would give you a rough idea of what Odyssey might be doing to your overhead speakers, but doesn't allow him to actually 100% know that is what Odyssey did to his overhead speakers when they're
can you see the
physically
curve?
Wired.
Can you see the curve for that speaker?
Within the Odyssey Editor app, yeah.
So if he did this, if he set them up as front left and rights, surround left and rights, ran Odyssey, looked at that curve, and that curve was, to his eye, identical or nearly identical
within the Odyssey Editor app as when he physically wires them as his overheads and does the same thing.
Yeah, I would be comfortable saying that then you could run those sweeps that way.
Yeah, that would be saying that it's a proxy. It is still a proxy. It's not exactly what you wanted to do, but at least it's giving you a very educated guess at what it's doing. Yeah. Yeah, but
Try
that's
it.
about the best. Yeah, we don't have a way to do precisely what you want to do, which is just send an individual
Yet.
signal that only plays out of one of those overhead speakers, and you get to measure it in Rumiki Wizard.
I
We
would.
don't know when
I
to
mean,
do that.
whoever the Rim Wizard people are too, you could always email them and say, "Hey, are you guys working on metadata?
Are you working
so
on
that,
object-based audio to let us
so
do
that
this?
we
Right?
can do this?" Yeah, because it seems like you should be able to. Because the is it DTS? Which one is the free one? There's a free one, right? That doesn't require the $10 billion Dolby console thing to do it or whatever it is.
I'm not sure.
Isn't the object-based audio that they were anyways, doesn't matter. Ryan on Facebook. How much time we have? 10 minutes.
Go,
Ryan?
10 minutes, yeah.
Hopefully we can do you in 10 minutes. Is getting underway with his basement theater construction. The dimensions will be 11 by 27 by 7. He's going to have a false wall at the front, so his front speakers will be behind an acoustically transparent screen, and he will end up with 12 feet from the back wall to his primary seat and 12 feet from his primary seat to the front of the screen, which leaves
3 feet behind
3
the screen.
feet. He wants his speakers that will be able to hit full reference volume at these distances. Right now, he tends to go with the Send Acoustics CTM 340 SEs for his front, left, center, and right. And since he's excited about the idea of being able to do a 9.2.6 setup thanks to the new Denon AVR X8500H, he figures he'll use the CBM170 SE speakers as front wides. Will those speaker choices get the job done?
Yes.
9.2.6. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the CMT 340 SEs, they can absorb 400 watts if you want them to. You're still only 12 feet away, which is not,
you're right. Yeah.
not an astronomical distance. So, yeah, those would be absolutely fine. Your front wides will actually be quite a bit closer to you.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be on your side walls. The idea is to create a plus or minus 60-degree angle to your front wide. So they're actually going to be on your side walls quite a bit closer to you than your front left and right. So, yeah, those should be great speaker choices for that.
He wants his surround back speakers to be in walls, and he wants 6 in-ceiling speakers. He'd like to be able to get all 10 of these in walls and in-ceiling speakers for under $1,000. But he also wants to make sure they'll still they're going to sound great. So there's some wiggle room in the budget if it's really, really necessary. What in-wall and in-ceiling speakers will match well with the Ascends, be able to hit full reference volume and not break the bank? Outdoor Speaker Depot or something else? Okay, you're only 7 feet. Oh, the ceiling's only 7 feet high.
Ceiling's only 7 feet high, yeah.
They're not going to, so the in-ceiling speakers are not going to be an issue. I don't see any reason why you could not get the Outdoor Speaker Depot for the ones in the in-ceiling, since they are going to be very close anyways, and full reference volume shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
The surround speakers are going to be very close to you as well.
Yeah, because they're on the sides.
On the sides. And the back speakers are going to be 12 feet away. Those are the ones that you would.
But they're also your surround backs. So how important are they really?
And how loud do they ever really get?
On top of that, the Outdoor Speaker Depot in-wall ones, which would be the, what is it, MKW 650s? Because I think there's a W in there for wall. Right. But it's the MK650 series anyway. They're 92 dB efficient, and they can take 175 watts, which means they can hit 105 decibels if you feed them that full 175 watts from 12 feet away.
Right.
So even if you want to, they could do it. I mean, certainly budget-wise, those Outdoor Speaker Depot, the MK650 series, for all of them, it'll fit your budget. It'll hit the reference volume that you want to hit. I think they're I mean, certainly for the overheads, completely reasonable for that.
Surround backs as well, I would think would be okay.
Surround backs. So maybe you get a different pair for your surrounds. Maybe. It's very iffy.
Yeah. I mean, you can make a case for it. If you could tell me, buy the Ascend in wall, blah, 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 made to match with the ones that you've got, I'd be like, okay. But I don't think Ascend has an in-wall, do they?
They don't have any in-walls, no. I mean, you could do HTM 200s. You could kind of build them into the wall or into a column or something like that.
I don't know. I'm
you could go RBH.
Yeah, I mean, RBH would be great, but I really don't think it's necessary. I just don't think it's necessary. I think that you just stick with the outdoor speaker all the way around.
I'm guessing you're going to have 2 rows of seats. If you got 12 feet from your primary row to the back wall, I'm guessing you're having 2 rows of seats, so maybe you're going to have 2 pairs of surround speakers.
Yeah, it could be.
In which case, now you can get 12 speakers from Outdoor Speaker Depot and still be within your budget. I'm leaning pretty strongly to just sticking with Outdoor Speaker Depot, the MK650 series here. I think
I'm having a real hard
ticks all
time
the
coming up
boxes.
with a valid,
to do
good
anything
reason
else.
to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you could point me to the perfectly timbre matched or very closely timbre matched Ascend speakers that are whatever, I'd be like, okay. But without that, you're just spending more just to spend more. I just don't see it making much difference. How wide does your room need to be in order for front wides to be effective? You got to have them 60 degrees off. So as long as 60 degrees is not like, I mean, I don't think it has to be very wide at all, right?
My room is barely 11 feet wide. I got front wides in there.
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't have any length either.
Jokes write themselves. 60 degrees off of you, just do the angle, do the measurement there, and off that front seat, and just see if it makes sense for your room.
Yeah,
your room is plenty wide though, right?
Well, it's 11 feet. So it's not super
wide.
wide. No, I think the confusion, and this is completely understandable, is that people hear front wides and they figure they are supposed to be on the front wall, very wide apart. And it's like,
but they're not. They're really on the side walls. And they are the first reflection point.
They are the first reflection point.
The first reflection point. Yeah,
that's right.
So you have a first reflection point. That's where those speakers would go.
That's right.
So any wide or any not wide is fine.
Yeah.
What's the procedure for using 3 receivers so that you can expand the 9.2.4 to a 9.2.6 setup? Wait, what? Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Because the X8500H can run 13 speakers, so we can do 9.2.4.
Yeah. So the way this works is that you feed the receiver. Let me see if I've got this right. You take your receiver's overhead outputs.
Yeah.
So your front,
top front and top rear, or it could be front height and rear height.
Whatever it is, right? So you take those overhead outputs. Now let's say top fronts and top rears.
Yes,
this is the easiest way to do this.
Yeah.
So you take the top front right and the top rear right, and you feed that in from the pre-outs into a receiver as right and left front speakers. Okay.
Yeah.
Then from there, you feed that out to 3 speakers. Your front right, your front top right, whatever it is, the rear right, and then you matrix the center channel like you normally would as a matrix between the two.
And that becomes your top middle right.
That's right. You do the same thing with the left with the second receiver, extra receiver, so the third receiver, whatever.
And 3 receivers, yeah.
So now you have 3 receivers.
Yeah, so just think of it, you know how you can take any stereo signal and you could have left, this would be like front left, front right, and then create a center using like Dolby Pro Logic or any surround up mixer. That's what we're doing. We're just doing it on the ceiling. And instead of being left and right, it's front and back. And what's being matrixed in between them is a middle instead of a center.
Right.
So that's how it's happening, and you need to do that twice.
Yeah, you would need to do this with. That's why I like going with the top fronts and the rear
top
rears, because the top middles are supposed to be kind of in between them anyways.
That's right.
If you do like top fronts and rear heights, you're kind of matrixing it off to the side, sort of. I mean,
now,
to the back of the room a little bit.
I do want to point out the very important thing here, which is that in order for that to work correctly, and Dolby actually has 9.1.6 test tones that you can download from their website, and those are discrete test tones. So they actually have like a top middle left test tone that is only supposed to come out of your top middle left speaker. And you will find that, let's say you set up your X8500H, and you've set it up as 9.2.4 with top fronts and top rears, and you've allowed Odyssey to run the auto setup. That means it has set unique distances for your top front left and your top rear left, and it's set unique levels, trim levels, and it's EQ'd them uniquely for those two things. When that top front left and that top rear left get fed into your Dolby Pro Logic receiver and you try to matrix out the top middle, it doesn't work, because you have potentially different distances, different levels, and different EQs. And in order to matrix the top middle, it must be getting identical information from the top front left and the top rear left so that it can create a center, a top middle left. So what you actually need to do, and you can do this because the X8500H has the the ability to use the Odyssey Editor app. So you can still have Odyssey applied to all of your speakers, but then you will manually edit your top speakers, top fronts and top rears, so that they have the same distance, the same trim level, and the same EQ, which means you can just blank out the EQ.
Right.
Or just make sure that the EQs are identical. And then you will get a perfectly discrete top middle speaker matrixed in between them. So that's an important wrinkle.
The reality is, don't do this. This is ridiculous. But okay.
Carl and Carrie's are both super short, so I think we can hit those and then we're done.
Yeah, I know. Carl. AVS Forum reported that the first functional HDMI 2.1 transceiver chips were shown at CES, but lots of news outlets reported that 0 TVs will actually be coming out this year with HDMI 2.1. So what about AV receivers? Is there anything coming out in 2018 that will actually support HDMI 2.1? I don't know. Rob?
Well, the things we've been talking about all day today, the X8500H and the AV8805 Pre-Pro from AVRant will not have HDMI 2.1 out of the box. But they already said that you will be able to ship them to Denon.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry.
And they will replace the HDMI boards for a fee. Now, this is very reminiscent. If we go back to their former flagships, there was the X7200W, there was the AV8802 from Marantz, and when they first came out, they did not support HDCP 2.2 copy protection.
You had to ship them in and all that.
But you could ship them in, and then they became the X7200WA and the AV8802A, and there was a fee, and you had to ship them in, and they shipped them back, and they replaced the HDMI board. So the same thing is happening. Same thing is happening.
I'm just going to tell you, if you were really serious about buying one of these receivers, just wait until they...
There could be that.
They just wait until they start coming out with it already in there.
But the point is, the flagships that they release, they only do it on a 3-year life cycle.
I understand.
So they're like, don't worry, if HDMI 2.1 becomes a thing, you're not going to be left out of the cold. You spent $4,000.
No, nothing is shipping with 2.1.
Nothing is shipping with it, no.
Carrie asked, what are the brands and models of banana plugs we always recommend? I like the GLS, is that right?
Yeah, GLS locking banana
the
plugs are the ones you like.
I like those. I do like those.
You can get them from Amazon. They're not super expensive. And the locking banana plug, basically the end goes into the binding post, and then you twist the barrel, which splays out the banana plug inside of the binding post and locks it in place.
You can swing your receiver around on one of those things if you try. The cable will fall apart.
Very secure.
It is very secure once it's in there.
I like Sewell. That's Sewell. They have two models that I like. I used to use the deadbolts. I really like those. They're the type of design where you feed the speaker wire up through the bottom, then it splays out at the top, and you screw down the top of the banana plug on top of that. So it makes
I don't really like that one. It's kind of hard to. It's kind of hard to. I don't like that one.
But they have one that I like even better now, which is the Strike. So it's the Sewell Strike, and that one, you just feed it in through the bottom of the barrel, and then you just screw down the top, which has a big metal wedge inside it that automatically splays the wire for you.
I like
and
that
it's
one
even
better.
faster and easier. So the Sewell Strike are the ones I like. Tom likes the GLS locking.
I do like the locking ones. I do appreciate the other ones, how easy they are to take out and put back in and stuff like that.
And they're so cheap that if they ever do become loose, because they're not locking, they're just spring-loaded. If they ever do become loose, you just replace them because, man, they're cheap.
Yeah. All right, so who else we got that we're going to answer next week? Because we went through a big chunk of questions.
Yeah, we did
week.
good. So we got Josh, Ian, and Byron. And that's it.
Byron, dude, that guy's always asking questions. Byron.
Well, we must be helpful. It's nice
be.
to have return listeners.
Those of you that are watching the video may be wondering where Daisy is. Daisy hasn't been eating the last couple of days. I'm very, very concerned about Daisy. So I have given her the night off. I want to... I talked on Facebook to a herpetologist, whatever they're called. And, you know, she's not super worried because she's not lethargic or listless or seems to be having any sort of problems with her digestive tract. But she should be eating and she's not, and I don't know why. So if she doesn't eat tomorrow, I'm going to take her to the vet and figure out what the heck's going on, because I'm very concerned right now. But so I gave her the night off tonight, but hopefully she'll be back next week. She seems to be in great spirits. She's jumping around. She's climbing all over me. She still enjoys, snuggling and stuff like that. But she just hasn't had an interest in food the last couple of days. So not really sure what's going on, but we'll find out next week. And if next week I come back in tears, you'll know it's something terrible has happened. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Earl for his donation. He went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That money goes into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and stuff like that. So thank you very much, Earl.
Yeah, Earl, thanks so much for that donation. We appreciate it.
We want to thank our 51 patrons over at Patreon for their donations. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Yeah, thanks so much to our 51 patrons on patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
Lastly, we want to thank Jason and Carrie for talking us up to SVS and Marantz, and talking SVS up to other people. Jason did. So always a good thing. So thank you, Jason. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for talking directly to Gary Yakubian there. Always fun when that happens. And Carrie, thanks for talking us up to Accessories for Less after you got your new Marantz receiver. Congrats on that purchase.
If you would like to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You can do that by emailing us at question@avrant.com. If you need to know the rest of the contact information, rewind to the beginning, and I'll say it there. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.